Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Caritas. Today is Friday the 13th, December. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're just going to do a weekly wrap-up. I have no real catchy title for today's podcast. It's just going to be a weekly wrap-up because it's basically been the same stories throughout the entirety of this week, which we said at the beginning of this week was likely going to transpire in such a fashion because those were the big stories. They had yet to be played out, so we assumed correctly that they were going to play out throughout the entirety of this week, and that's exactly what took place. So it's going to be the same stories. It's going to be the same song and dance with some of the market performance, which I'll get to here in a minute. U.S.-China trade deal phase one, whatever that means. There's still not a lot of clarity on that, but we expected that there was going to be some sort of conclusion, whether it was going to be in regards to phase one or with the tariff man, President Donald J. Trump, increasing tariffs by Sunday or postponing them or canceling them. A decision had to be made. We also have the impeachment inquiry continuing. There was now a vote in the House Judiciary Committee that the president has been impeached via that committee. It will now move to a full House vote. And then, of course, we have the conclusion of the UK elections. And, of course, the Conservative Party held their ranks, they remain in power, and they grew their majority substantially by a spread that we have not seen since the 1980s with Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will remain in the captain's seat for the foreseeable future. Of course, a lot of his success and that of the Conservative Party is going to be predicated on how well and how quickly they are able to deliver Brexit. That's one of the main reasons I focused on that international news story, because it is something that I find important to the institution of democracy. I find it's abhorrent the way that it has been used politically for the past 3.5 years, because that vote took place in June of 2016, and here we are about to start 2020, and the Brits, they had to go through an entire new general election. They had to get rid of Theresa May, the former prime minister. Now you got Boris Johnson. It appears that the British people remain somewhat united in the fact that they voted for Brexit 3.5 years ago. That vote needs to be honored and validated by their elected officials. And so they've put more conservatives into power to get this Brexit deal done once and for all. It has to happen. So we'll see what the Conservative Party under the leadership of Prime Minister Boris Johnson can do. Of course, he promised that it was going to take place this year, that he was going to stand up, he was going to come into power, stand up to the Labour Party and other anti-Brexit parties, if you will, or at least more skeptical people and parties of the Brexit process. He said, nope, we're going to get it through. Of course, that did not happen. So it was a continuation of kicking the can down the road. But now it appears that the British people gave him, once again, a mandate to get this done. Time will tell. I will keep you posted. But if they continue to kick this thing down the road, I am not going to continue to bore you with some of those details. But I do find it important because this is the institution of democracy. And if it's going to get shut down in the UK, how long before it gets shut down here in the United States? Because there's not too many places left where the will of the people, the voice of the people is actually heard and respected. You have to have follow-through. Talk is cheap. We need to see the action. So we'll see what Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party can do. So to some of the market performance here, I get a lot of my data and some of my news headline stories off of Trading Economics. I've told this audience that before. Their headline article here reads the following: U.S. stocks close little changed despite trade clarity. Really? Despite trade clarity? Maybe they've closed little changed because of the trade clarity. Wall Street closed mixed on Friday as investors digested the development of a Phase 1 trade deal between the U.S. and China and remain expectant of further detail. On Friday, China confirmed that they had struck an agreement with the U.S. that includes a phased rollback of tariffs but offered few specifics. Well, la-di-da. There's not going to be a lot of specifics released to the public, ladies and gentlemen. Why would there be? Because then you have facts to go off of instead of all of the propaganda and the lies that we have been experiencing for almost 2 years now, being jerked around like idiots for the past 2 years so we can continue to prime these markets higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down 12 points. The S&P was flat for the day. The Nasdaq 100 was up 0.2%. A mixed bag across Europe, but mainly in the green. Of course, we were discussing the Japanese markets last night. They continued with their rally. They were up and they closed up about 2.5% for the day. And the Chinese composite, the Shanghai index, was up 1.8%. So where does this leave us for the remainder of this year, and where were we headed through 2020? Well, it's really anybody's guess, because we said here last night, initial reporting was that there was not going to be a signing ceremony. Now we hear today that there is going to be some sort of signing ceremony. We don't know where, but we are told early in January. We're also told that the Chinese are going to purchase about $50 billion worth of agricultural products. Primarily, it's going to consist of soybeans and pork bellies. But this is over the course of 2 years. So if you do the simple math, that takes you to $25 billion a year, assuming they stick to the plan. That takes us right back to where we were 2 years ago when this whole thing began. So how is this a fantastic deal? How is this the best deal ever for farmers if it takes them right back to where they were? Right back to square one. Not any advantage or disadvantage. Of course, it's an advantage for some of the larger farms. Why? Because they don't have competition anymore. Because a lot of smaller farms went bankrupt during this process. Some art of the deal. Who was the president looking out for? Because also, folks, that's where most of the bailout money, yes, the bailout money that's coming from you and I, not from China paying us tariffs. We're the ones that are flipping the bill for the tariffs. So we had to bail out the farmers, and most of that money went to the larger industrial-sized, commercial-sized farms. So much for that. And of course, we don't know if China's going to stick to the script. Why would they? We've been told the whole reason we were going after China is because they don't stick to the script. They lie. They cheat. They steal. So now, all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe them, even if they sign this? Haven't they signed other agreements? Aren't they on the Paris Climate Accord? Well, how many coal plants have they just opened and are continuing to open? They don't care. They don't give a damn. So why are we supposed to trust them all of a sudden? And of course, they have an entire year, actually 2 years, to make good on this. So why would we even ponder? Why would we even consider starting negotiations when it comes to phase 2? Don't we have to make sure that they follow through on phase 1? And phase 1 should be the easiest thing for them to comply with because it has to deal with food. And they have 1.4 billion people to feed. This should be a no-brainer. But the Chinese have, and they can source soybeans and pork bellies and other agricultural products from elsewhere. And they have, and they are. So this got us right back to where we were 2 years ago. There is still going to be an immense amount of uncertainty that remains in the market, especially, I do believe, if this deal is ever released to the public in its entirety. Because we've been told some of it might be redacted due to national security reasons. Now that's what's being reported. Anything could change. We don't know. But why would we discuss phase 2 if we're going to? Because I imagine Donald Trump and company are going to come out and jerk us around with a phase 2 deal as well. But why even start it if they haven't made good on phase 1? I know I'm thinking logically, and that's not how this administration operates, but I think that that's an important question to ask, an important question to ponder. Shouldn't you make sure that they adhere to the rules of phase 1 before we even start talking about phase 2? Otherwise, we're just wasting time. Because we know those are the big ticket items. And if it took us 2 years to get back to where we were 2 years ago, my goodness, why would the Chinese ever make it an easy thing to really tackle the big issues of intellectual property theft, technology transfers, all that other jazz? They're not going to. They're not going to. And did Donald Trump cave on this deal because he doesn't want to take a hit to his precious stock market, which is what we said was most likely going to happen? You know, I've told you folks, and I've tried to give this president a number of times, on a number of occasions, the ability to step forward and really be a leader, to look past the pettiness, to look past the materialism, to look past the fake and inflated economic numbers, whether that's GDP, whether that's the unemployment figures, whatever it might be. Get off of the bubble that is the stock market. Get off of it. Come in here and look the American people in the eye and tell them, I have a mandate as the President of the United States to drain the swamp. And that's exactly what I was sent here to do, and that's exactly what I am going to do, but I'm going to need your help. I cannot do this alone. We're going to have to do this together. We're going to have to put aside the materialism. We're going to have to put aside the consumerism. We're going to have to put aside the inflated stock market, the inflated phony government numbers, and we're going to have to go after these institutions. And we're going to have to structurally reform our government and, in conjunction, our society, because it is so corrupted at the root that it needs to be uprooted and it needs to be restored back to constitutional and American values. And in this process, the stock market might like it and it goes up, it might not. GDP might go up, it might not. Unemployment figures might go down, they might not. We're not concerned about that. We are concerned with the heart and soul of the United States of America. We're going to clean this house because for far too long, the few have controlled and dominated the many for far too long. The concentration of power in this country is the antithesis to the founding of this country, to our very core as Americans, to the very crux of our Constitution. And enough is enough. And if he did that, he could have went after everybody. He could have went after the Federal Reserve. He could have went after deep state pockets, because there's no question that there are people that you can throw into a bucket that would be comprised of the deep state that have their own agenda, that do their thing regardless of who's in power, regardless of who's in Congress, who's in the White House. It makes no difference. There's no question that there are elements within this government that do it. We know through whistleblowers, Edward Snowden in particular, with how private corporations, Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, you name them, basically give a backdoor to the government so the NSA can spy on all of us. We know this. Where's the outrage? There is none. There was no outrage when that was released to the public already, 4 or 5 years ago, because it was under the Obama administration. Nothing transpired from then. Donald Trump doesn't talk about it. Bill Barr doesn't talk about it, the Attorney General. What's being done? Absolutely nothing as far as I know. If you heard contrary, these are the main issues. Not where's the stock market, not how lower interest rates. These are the core problems of this country, and they're not being addressed. He could have went after them. Stock market be damned, GDP be damned. We have to straighten out this country. All of these trade deals, which have, there's no question that they have had an adverse effect by sending jobs overseas. There's no question about it. But a lot of that is our own doing because we have terrible regulations, we have terrible tax policy, and we have a Federal Reserve that destroys capital. So it creates malinvestment. We go through this process all the time here at the Capital News. Donald Trump had a mandate, just like Barack Obama did. I didn't vote for Barack Obama. I don't like him as a president. I don't know him personally, obviously, but as a president, as a policymaker, I don't like him. But when he came into power, he had the opportunity to become one of the greatest presidents of all time, because he could have restored this country back to our constitutional values. He could have restored this country back to free market capitalism, because he came in the midst of the Great Recession, one of the worst financial collapses since the Great Depression. He had a clean slate. He could have said, see you guys later, bye-bye. You screwed the system over. Why should you be rewarded and bailed out by the taxpayers, the same people who you just screwed over? But he didn't, either because of naivete or because he was bought off. Either is unacceptable, or that's just honestly what he believed, that was the best thing to do. None of those options are acceptable. And now in comes Donald Trump. When he was a candidate, he was pointing all of these things out, that the Federal Reserve is, printing funny money, inflating bubbles all over the place. Stock market is a bubble. The economy is a bubble. The government figures are all phony. Now he embraces all of it. And he wants negative interest rates. That in and of itself is unbecoming of a president, as far as I'm concerned, because I understand the negative consequences that are going to come from it. And if you've been a follower of this podcast for a while, you better understand it too. And if you don't, send me your questions. If I need to clarify something better, I will be glad to do it. I do this for you. So if you don't understand what negative interest rates means and how it's going to affect you personally, then send me a letter on the Capital News website, anywhere this is posted, LinkedIn, YouTube, write it. Because it is detrimental. And when you have a president who gets up in front of the Economic Club of New York and says, I want negative interest rates, give me that money, it's your money. It's your money. That's unbecoming of a president as far as I'm concerned. There's no leadership there whatsoever. That's trying to take an easy way out by stealing your money, which they already do through taxation and inflation. It's time to take a stand, ladies and gentlemen, against all of this. Donald Trump had the mandate to do it. And he has the personality to do it. But he isn't. He isn't. It's a failure of leadership. I told you before, the only leaders on this planet are the people around this world, around this planet, who are taking to the streets and protesting their governments, standing up for themselves, their families, their neighbors, for the right to self-govern, to have politicians who are not filling government halls with their cousins and family members, uprooting nepotism and all of the abuse and corruption that takes place. People are sick and tired of it. We are hitting that point of no return because people are sick and tired of having every cost of living, everything that they got to pay for, continue to go up. Whether that's a tax on gasoline or diesel, whether that's an increase in the cost of bus fare or metro fare or anything of the like. It is the last penny, the last nickel, the last dime, the last dollar that is being taken from these people, and they're just saying enough is enough. They are the leaders, and it should be the United States that's leading by example, but unfortunately it is not, because we continue to focus on the stock market, on materialism, and on consumerism, and that is going to be the destruction of this country, because that completely destroys the soul and the purpose of this country. And unfortunately, we have a president who is far too focused on materialism and consumerism, which is probably why he is the president of the United States. He's simply a reflection of who we are in the aggregate as the United States of America. And the fact that he is so focused on the stock market set up a huge opening, a huge weakness for the president, in which the Chinese could exploit and use to their advantage. Because if Donald Trump had been more concerned with the things that I had just outlined as opposed to the consumerism and the numbers, China would be in a lot of trouble. But they're not. Because they could say, oh, well, all we have to do is come out and say there's no deal, the stock market's going to tank, Donald Trump will throw a hissy fit. We got him. We got him. And now what do we have? We have absolutely nothing. We have what we had 2 years ago. Why? Because they know that Donald Trump will not allow this stock market to sell off so much as it is in his power. And he has proven over the past year and a half, most specifically because of what happened last year, that he has a lot of power and control in manipulating these markets. And apparently he also has some sway in convincing Jay Powell and those at the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates and to begin another round of quantitative easing. So if Donald Trump had come forward, really stepped up to the plate to be the leader that I think most Americans were hoping that he would be, then China would be in a completely different position. We might actually be getting something out of this. In fact, we're not getting much of anything. We're not getting much of anything, so that's a true shame. But that's where we are with that. U.S. retail sales rise less than forecast. U.S. retail trade rose 0.2% from a month earlier in November, easing from a revised 0.4% growth in October and missing market expectations of an increase of 0.5%. So we got 0.2%. The market was anticipating an increase of 0.5%. That, again, is U.S. retail sales. Not looking good, folks. Isn't this supposed to be the holiday shopping season? Wasn't everything supposed to be a blowout on Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, all that BS? Again, the consumerism. 0.2%. The last pillar, the last man standing, keeping this economy together, if you will, is the U.S. consumer. Stretched out, again, on credit cards, paying 17%, 20% per month. I mean, you have to be a genius to pay that. Impeachment. Again, the House Judiciary Committee had their vote this morning. They voted along party lines in the affirmative. It will now move to a full House vote next week, where in all likelihood Donald J. Trump will become the third president in the history of the United States to be impeached. And then it will move to the Senate, where we already had quite a few interviews by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky saying that he is already coordinating with the White House. This, to me, does not make sense. This is a juror coordinating with the defense. I just don't see how that's going to work, but that's what they're going to do. And I also believe this is sort of what took place during the trial of Bill Clinton, too. The Democratic Senate was in control at that time, I do believe, and they worked with the White House as well. Not right there either. Again, I don't care who you are. Republican, Democrat, Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush, I don't care. Lock them all up, if that's what it takes. If, of course, they are guilty. I'm not putting somebody who's innocent behind bars. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but you get my point. You don't point to bad behavior as justification for further bad behavior. You don't have it like this. I mean, I just don't think that this is right at all. To have the Senate, to have a member of the jury coordinating with the White House. I don't think it's supposed to work like that. And then there is something that was the defense bill that was passed, again, another $738 billion or something like that. Again, going to the military-industrial complex. That's fantastic. So now we were, at 2 points? Now we're closer to $3 trillion over the course of the past few years of the Trump administration. So again, so much for draining the swamp. I mean, the military-industrial complex in conjunction with the financial system, that's the swamp, folks. That's the swamp. And they're getting trillions and trillions of dollars. Because who do you think finances a lot of this stuff? The banks do. I mean, the banks have their hand in every cookie jar. And now you have the military-industrial complex doing just fine. Just fine. I mean, when Trump took office, we were out of bullets. Well, my goodness, we must have quite the stock of ammunition now with $3 trillion worth over the past few years. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, are we preparing for war? Is that why so much money is going through the Defense Department and the defense in general? Interesting question, isn't it? Because what have I stated here many times before? When all else fails, they take us to war. So that's in the back of my mind that something could break out at any moment in any corner of the globe. But there was something in the bill, and I admittedly say to this audience, I have not taken a deep dive into this bill. However, it's my understanding that this bill included in it paid family leave for government employees. Now, again, I don't know if this is for all federal government employees or if it's just within the Defense Department, but either way, I don't like this. I know I've done a podcast on this probably months ago when this was being floated out there before, and that had to do more with Congress passing a law that pretty much ordered private companies mandating that they offer their employees paid family leave. I'm totally against this. Totally against it. Especially at the government level. Because we're paying for it. The government isn't that efficient and effective of a producer to begin with. They're a net drag on the economy as far as I'm concerned. These people get paid well. They get excellent benefits, and now we're tacking on more benefits to them. How many people in this country don't have this benefit? Again, I'm not advocating that we should, but it should be the people who have it before federal employees do, especially with the mismanagement, waste, corruption, and abuse that they all go through and put all of us through and make us flip the bill for it. I just don't get this. How can this be? Doesn't make any sense. You cannot mandate it from the government down to private citizens and private corporations, no matter how small or large. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not their business. It's your business. When the government can step in and intervene to the degree that which they do and dictate how you have to operate, it's no longer your business, it's their business. And then they hit you over the head with taxes, so you have to pay for the privilege of being told what to do. It's completely backwards. This is not free market capitalism in the least. There is too much intervention. There are too many regulations. There are too many orders from on high as to how you have to operate. And what about people who aren't married or don't want children? What do they get to do? Do they get to go on vacation? Because I think this is for 12 weeks. That's 3 months. Would you like to take a vacation for 3 months? Just sit it out and get paid for the privilege of it? I'd enjoy that. You probably would too. So again, the government's always picking people against others. Homeowners against people who decide to rent. People who decide to have children versus people who don't. This is not a good functioning government, ladies and gentlemen. They shouldn't have any say-so in this whatsoever. If you, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, want to give your employees this type of benefit, that's your business. And you'll come up with the best way that you think to manage it. Whether that's hiring a temporary employee while somebody's out on family leave or whatever the case may be, whether it's cross-training your employees, maybe it's you can take off but you're not going to be paid, or you can take off but we're going to cut your pay in half. Let them solve it. Let them solve it. When the government comes in, that's it. You got to follow rules or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I don't like this, especially the fact that it is at the government level. Because now, John Q. Public, you and me, through all our taxpayer dollars, gets to give somebody a 3-month vacation, and they get to get paid for it, all because they had a kid. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. And again, what about those people who decide not to have kids? Why do they get to sit there? Maybe they want to go on vacation and do something else. I mean, congratulations to the new parents. I'm all for family. That's what we have to get back to in this country. But not on my dime. I'm not paying for your vacation. You're not paying for mine. I don't like it. And you shouldn't either. So that's the weekly wrap-up, folks. It's going to be a continuation next week. Is there going to be more clarity with this with this trade deal phase 1? Is there going to be a phase 0.1, phase 0.111, or what? I mean, we have no idea. Is there really going to be a signing ceremony in early January? Who's going to sign it? Where's it going to be? Is it now buy the rumor, sell the facts, so now we're going to have some facts? Is this thing all going to give way now? Or do we just have to hope and pray that the Federal Reserve is going to come to the rescue with about $500 billion worth of liquidity from yesterday to the end of this year? So are we going to get our Santa Claus rally? Or are we going to get our stocking full of coal? Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Kapital News. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. It is Friday. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see what takes place over the weekend as to whether or not I will do a look-ahead segment on Sunday. If not, I will be back here hopefully on Monday, and we will continue with the Kapital News. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.